General Plan Working Group to order. Today is Thursday, January 11th, 2024, 5 p.m. So can you do roll call for us, please?
Chair Stanish,
Here.
Vice Chair Hetchman, here. Committee Member Okamura,
Here.
Committee Member Donnelly,
Here.
Committee Member Holslander,
Here.
Committee Member Adamson,
Here.
Committee Member Darden,
Here.
Alternate Committee Member Dolk,
Here.
Alternate Committee Member Duke, here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next up on the agenda is public comment. If anyone would like to speak on anything that's not on tonight's agenda, you can come to the podium and please do so. Okay, anybody online?
There are none, Chair.
Okay, so we'll move on. Action items. Approval of the minutes of November 2, 2023. Any questions?
I just have a question. It looks like in the minutes that we had determined that the meetings in December and early January were not occurring, but I recall we were leaving it that was a question. And so I'm just wondering if in the minutes, did the notice need to be, is it necessary to have that notice in those minutes? Or should there be a notice that cancellation happened after? Or am I not remembering correctly?
Well, I think we talked about, no, it was canceled, so it wouldn't necessarily be on those minutes. Technically, it would be after the fact. Is that correct?
Yeah, the cancellation process isn't related to the minutes. So that was a separate process. I understand the question. I'm not sure that there's a substantive concern here that whether we discussed it or came to a decision. So.
It was just noted in the minutes. So for the minutes to be accurate, it felt weird that, yes, we talked about it, but yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we hadn't, I believe you're right, we hadn't quite made the decision yet. So.
Evan? Anybody else? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from November 2nd, 2023?
So moved.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a first and a second.
May I ask who seconded, please?
Tom?
Okay. Committee Member Darden,
Yes.
Committee Member Donnelly,
Yes.
Chair Stanish,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hetchman,
Yes.
Committee Member Okamura,
Yes.
Committee Member Holslander,
Yes.
Committee Member Adamson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We're on to discussion. 4.1 land use elements revisions. Paul?
Chair Paul Yunker, City Contract Planner. We could go ahead and bring up the presentation. We're going to be discussing 3 text passages for the general plan this evening that are either new sections or modifications. We can go ahead. The first is a discussion that will be added to the general plan about California Forever. This is obviously a moving target. 3-4 months ago, we didn't even know it was a residential project. We're learning more on a day-by-day basis, but we know we're going to want to have a discussion of California Forever in the general plan. So this is our first attempt at that. Also, we are proposing a new designation, medium density residential, and a new designation of urban reserve. So these are 3 new sections that would be added to the land use element. Next slide. Let's see. What we're talking about for California Forever is really just an introductory statement that says, what is the project? What do we know about? And how does it affect Rio Vista? Let's go ahead and go forward. Let's go ahead and go to the California Forever language. Okay. I apologize. The language itself isn't in here because it's somewhat long. Let's go back. Yeah. In essence, we're acknowledging that there is a very large project that is going to be close to Rio Vista, yet we don't know exactly what the land uses are at this time. we understand that Flannery, California Forever owns 62,000 acres at this point. They will be going forward and seeking to get approvals of that project as development within the county. And so that's a very big moving part that's sitting somewhere near Rio Vista. At this point, the discussion we've proposed for the general plan is, I would say, placeholder, because we're expecting within the next 2 weeks to actually understand what the California Forever proposal will be. At that point, we'll be able to analyze more how it's going to impact Rio Vista and what we want to do to respond to the proposal. So I don't think it's worth spending a lot of time on the draft language right now, in that there's still a fog that's lifting as far as what the proposal is and how it affects us. So that section will go back and revisit it. But some of the items are that we know California Forever, if it's built, is going to affect traffic patterns. It's going to bring people to the region. Some of that could be beneficial to the city economically. Some of it could be negative from a cultural character perspective. So there's a lot to evaluate about what this very large proposal next to Rio Vista will do to us. And we'll continue to flesh out the discussion as we know more about it. So that's the section that will be in the land use element. It's not policy language. It's just, it documents where we were in 2024. When people look back, what was the city thinking about this? They'll understand the nature of our policy decisions better. So that's the California Forever overview. Next slide. We are proposing a new designation for the general plan of medium density residential. And this has come about partly because we looked at the city 62-acre property, and we know we're going to have some development that is not really single family and it's not really multifamily. But right now our designation jumps from neighborhood residential, which is single family, up to multifamily, and there's nothing in the middle which could accommodate things like small lot resident, single family, or townhouses, or, you know, that kind of in-between density that's in the range of 10 to 14 dwelling units per acre. So we've got a gap. And as we looked at the land use designations, we have something called historic residential that really in its character is what we're thinking of as medium density residential. It could be single family homes, it could be smaller apartments, not a particularly dense designation. And it really fits for what we're describing as medium density residential. Historic residential is only applied in the downtown area, but interestingly, nothing about the regulations really relate to the fact that it's older development that occurred at a different time when development was different. So we feel like we can remove the historic residential, apply the medium density. It will be very consistent with the housing that's downtown. It'll also be consistent with this kind of medium density type of development that we proposed for the city's 62-acre property. And we don't wind up having yet another residential designation, okay, because the historic residential and the medium density would be somewhat repetitive. So can we go to the next slide? This is the language here. Medium density residential provides for a mix of single family homes and compact housing types, intended to designation to foster a traditional neighborhood environment. That's kind of getting back to the downtown area as well as what we'd like to see in new development. Allows a range of housing types for people of all ages and stages. So we might see some age restricted development or something like that, smaller scale. It also allows for a little bit of commercial as well as churches, other uses like that. So it's fairly broad in its allowing supportive uses, and it fills in that gap between our traditional single family neighborhoods and apartments. So that's why we've proposed this. I think it might be worth asking if there's any questions about this before we move on.
Anybody up here have any questions? Go ahead. No, oh, yeah. Can you stand up at the microphone, please? Thank you.
Where is the 62,000 acres?
62
6,200?
acre,
62?
62 acres
And where is
is
it?
Church, Airport, and Harris. So it's near Homecoming. It's this vacant city-owned property out there.
Anybody else from the public? Question or comment? Anybody online?
There are none online.
Okay. All right, Paul.
Okay, so I think if there's no questions, we can move on to the next one. Urban Reserve had, this somewhat relates to the California Forever discussion. 2 or 3 meetings back, we looked at the fact that the city doesn't do any planning really outside of its boundaries, except for very limited areas. So we didn't reach outside at Brand Ranch. We didn't reach across Highway 12 to the southwest of town. We just stuck to the city limits. And once we realized that California Forever was coming and that they were the property owner for most of the land that would be kind of a natural extension of Rio Vista. If Rio Vista was going to grow, it would be around Brand Ranch, around Liberty, kind of extending on that side of Highway 12 or southwest within areas. We had the former Del Rio Hills project. That's, a little bit south of where I'm talking about, but we looked at all that and said, well, the city really should be stating its interest out here, particularly because we now have a property owner who's interested in development, expressed interest, and we should get in the game. At that point, we extended what's called our planning area boundary. Planning area just says, we think this affects us. We should be looking at this land because it's relevant to the city in the long term. So the Planning Commission did extend the boundary and made our planning area bigger. So it wraps around Brand Ranch on the north side of the town and it reaches across Highway 12. At the time, we designated it study area because that's a term that we've used in the past as a city. We've designated land on the very north extent of our industrial waterfront was designated study area. It's something we had used. What we're asking is that we change that designation to urban reserve, and we're doing it for a couple of reasons. One is the urban reserve designation doesn't provide any right to develop. It doesn't allow you to build houses or stores or jobs. It just says, this is a place we think we're going to develop, but we don't know exactly what it's going to be yet. Secondly, Solano County Local Agency Formation Commission, LAFCO, is familiar with this term. They recognize the term. They've allowed Vacaville to expand its sphere of influence and use the designation of urban reserve. So it's kind of understood, which is good because we are thinking about extending the city's sphere of influence to these lands around Rio Vista, most of which are owned by California Forever, so that we can have some say over what happens in those lands. So that's kind of the larger perspective that we're interested in and will be working on an update to the city's sphere of influence and municipal services review. And we will have to have a designation in there before we go and ask for our sphere of influence to be expanded. The urban reserve is that designation we think LAFCO will recognize and understand.
So if California Forever wasn't in our radar at this point, we probably wouldn't even have touched this. Is that correct?
We weren't going in that direction until they announced their plans. And then we said, well, we really should be trying to have some influence over what happens there and not just let it happen.
Anybody else have any questions about this?
I do, were you going to put up what the definition that you're
Yeah,
using?
we can
Okay.
go to the next slide. So this is the definition. It is applied to this expanded planning area that we designated a few meetings back. Again, it doesn't provide any right to develop. So this is not saying it's houses. It's not saying it's stores. It's just saying we think something will happen. Honestly, it could ultimately be open space that we designate for never to be developed. That's a possibility. So we really don't know what the designations will be at this time. And we've not heard anything from California Forever saying we'd like you to do something on our property. So we're just going with a a holding pattern of urban reserve. If we are interested in annexing this land in the future, we'll probably have to identify it for a specific use, open space or homes or stores. But for now, the urban reserve designation would allow us to continue forward with the general plan. And also we could move forward with a sphere of influence expansion.
Does anybody from the public have any questions right now? Okay, there is a raised hand. Oh,
Right
I'm
here.
sorry, Edwin. I didn't
We-
see it.
And I forgot my question too.
We
There-
have one online, Chair.
Okay,
With
If you want-
regards to urban reserve, that designation is, you said, is recognized by LAFCO. According to California Forever's website, they're going to be an unincorporated city, or not city, they're unincorporated, and as such, they don't actually fall under LAFCO. So does it have any teeth, or is it
It-
recognized by other bodies?
It doesn't really have any teeth until we annex, to be honest. We could designate a planning area to San Francisco. Nobody can really tell us what we can do, but we don't exercise any control. We can expand our sphere of influence. And at that point, if the county entertains development in the sphere of influence of the city, they have to consult with us. They don't have to do what we want. We really get control when it's annexed to the city.
But of course, annexation requires the property owner to agree to it.
In this
Which is
case,
all
if
Flannery.
California Forever did not want to annex, they could oppose, and because they own so much land, it would be dead before it started. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just a sphere of influence we're working on.
Yeah, we're only going as far as the sphere at this time.
was Roxanne online, I believe?
Yes, she is.
Go ahead, Roxanne.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. As far as annexation, by the way, my name's Roxanne Stiles Donnelly. As far as the annexation is concerned, it's my understanding that California Forever, well, not my understanding, I've heard them actually say it, announced that they were going to try and annex land into our city. So it's already in their plan. If this urban reserve designation needs to be done before their request, how quick can the city move to get this going?
Let me clarify something first. California Forever Flannery does own some land within the city. They bought property that was owned by the Espersons, and at one time it was called Del Rio Hills property or project. They own that land. So they're already landowners inside the city of Rio Vista. Would like to also clarify that while we don't have the plans, anticipated development plans of California Forever yet, we have been able to discuss with them the city's planning area boundary, and they have confirmed that they will not be proposing any development within the city's planning area boundary for their November measure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But I just want to let you know that at their town hall meetings they were having, the last two, I believe, because I've gone to about 4 of them, they actually announced that they were going to annex, in addition to their 500 acres that they own, they were going to annex another 300 into the city of Rio Vista. So this is something they're announcing to the public. So
Interesting. I had heard the comment was made that if the ballot measure fails, then Rio Vista would be their plan B. And now I don't know what plan B means. It sounds like maybe there was more specific comments that you, Roxanne, heard. I'm not familiar with those comments. I have heard the comment that if the ballot measure fails, then Rio Vista is their plan B, but they haven't communicated to us what being plan B means. And we haven't said to them, we have interest in being your plan B. So there's not really much to share on that.
yeah, it maybe when they come out with their plan, maybe we'll know more. But it surprised me that they were announcing this like it was a done deal to the public when the city of Rio Vista hasn't even talked to them.
It is absolutely not a done deal. There's been no discussions about California Forever developing in the city, relying upon city infrastructure, asking anything to support their development from the city in any discussions I've heard.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
In relation to the 500 approximately acres that was Del Rio Hills, that used to be the Esperson property. Just looking at it early, I know a lot of people, and I might be on board by this, is that seems like a perfect buffer between the city and anything they're potentially wanting to do out there. If I'm correct, it's currently zoned residential. There was, I don't know if it's still active, a development agreement that Lewis Homes had. Okay, so it's expired or it never went through.
They got right up to public hearings and walked away.
Okay, so is it still zoned residential then, essentially?
I will confirm that in just a moment.
And if so, should we be looking at that and maybe considering that as a buffer between us and them?
What we've done so far is, I'm not sure what the zoning is, and I can look that up. I can tell you that the general plan designated the Esperson property as a combination of R1 and R1 estate. R1 estate is 1 acre lots, and that was on the outboard side, so that would be that kind of idea of a buffer to where you got to 1 acre lots. This group has not expressed interest in changing the general plan designation. So we've just been retaining that combination of R1 and R1 estate. So if there's interest in doing something different there, we can discuss that now within this general plan update, or we can pick that up when we know more about.
Because they are indeed making statements that if this measure fails in November, they will immediately start looking at the Esperson property to build on. They are making public comments saying that. Because that would be, they wouldn't need any voter approval from that standpoint.
No, but they would need city approval. They have no rights to development at this time. So they would absolutely have to come in for general plan amendment and rezone. And at that point, the city's completely in the driver's seat. We don't have to justify why we approve or deny. So you have a lot of latitude.
Sorry, even with current state housing crisis laws, how much teeth do we have to stop such a development if it's zoned residential?
One second, I'm taking a look at the zoning right now. Okay, the zoning on our map is a combination of R1 and open space. So there is zoning out there that would allow development, but it's relatively low density. So they could come in and develop under certain laws. They could propose development consistent with the zoning that we could not deny. There is a whole bunch of coulds, mights, and ifs in that, that I honestly don't think it would be feasible for them to develop based on the zoning that's applied.
Isn't that property kind of like Swiss cheese with all the gas wells out there, and they'd have to remediate all that before as well?
My understanding is the property that's closer to 12 would be more developable, and the property that's further away from 12 is more cut up by underground gas infrastructure. It would be problematic. So there's some challenges to developing on the Esperson property, which may be why Lewis walked away.
Okay.
I was just wondering about inserting, when I first read it in the second sentence, when it talks about development potential or any entitlement for land development, I wondered if we wanted to just add or guidance there, or guidance around it.
Could
Just so
you
that-
identify the specific
Second
Change.
sentence,
second sentence?
okay, where it says does not provide sorry, I can't see it because of that. Does not provide any development potential or any entitlement for land development.
Okay,
I'm wondering if we just want to say, or any guidance thereof, just because using the word urban, while it's understood, for many also immediately thinks that it's going to be, you know,
I think that what you're trying to do is add not only that there's not a vested entitlement right, but also we really don't know what it's gonna be. Is
Right.
that kind of
Yes.
the concept?
Yeah.
Nick, do you understand the comment? Oh, you may be muted. We got that. Thank you. Okay, we, good with this one?
Yeah.
Okay, at this point, that was the land use sections. We're gonna, ask for your input on the draft circulation element. Nick, you want to take over?
Yes, good evening, Chair and General Plan Working Group Committee. I'm going to give a brief overview of the draft circulation element that we provided in your agenda packet for this evening. And we also have Carly Hoyt from Fair and Peers here as well to answer any questions or comments that you have. But before we get into that, we're going to just give an overview of where we've been the last few months with the general plan circulation element. Back in September, at the September 2023 General Plan Working Group meeting, our consultant, Fair and Peers, provided a high-level discussion of transportation and mobility options related to the future of Highway 12, related to mobility and active transportation in the city. And the discussion included the review of near and long-term strategies and recommendations to help manage congestion along Highway 12. And we presented initial draft goals and policies for discussion and input from the General Plan Working Group Committee, which we received a lot of great feedback that evening. Next slide. So we took that information and we reviewed the comments, and we created a refined set of draft goals and policies, which were then presented at the October 2023 meeting. And additionally, our consultant team and staff had added some implementation programs to the element. The changes to the goals and policies that were presented in that October meeting and the new implementation programs are presented in track changes in the draft document you received a few weeks ago for your review and comments. So tonight, our consultant team and city staff, we prepared a draft for your review and would like to get your comments and feedback so we can review that and then provide an updated draft in a few months. So any comments or questions?
Anybody up here have any?
I had just a few comments on the map. Do
Go
we
ahead.
want to talk about
Go ahead,
that
Tom.
at this point? A few things. One of the things that's showing a major collector that basically goes all the way down to St. Francis, down to the intersection with Bruning and then to Highway 12. And, you know, a lot of St. Francis there is pretty tight. I mean, once you get into the town proper there, so have a few concerns about characterizing that as a major collector. And related to that, is that intersection with Highway 12, is that planned to be a signalized intersection as part of the Caltrans improvements that are happening now? Because I mean, that's a really treacherous intersection.
It currently is not planned to be a signalized intersection. We asked for that and they denied it, and they're planning on still putting a crosswalk there.
Okay. Couple other questions I had to do with the other side of town here. The map was showing a break between Second and Front Street on Main Street. It's probably just for the text that says Front Street there. So I just wanted to make sure that the entirety of Main Street was considered a major collector. Just might be a graphics thing on the map.
I believe that's what it is. We'll confirm.
Okay. And then one other piece on Second Street, it's showing the major collector, Second Street, going all the way to Main Street. And I was thinking that it probably made more sense that it followed the truck route where it jogged down to Front Street at St. Gertrude, that's really kind of the primary traffic path, you know, that our truck routing system at least follows.
Apologies, I'm still catching that getting Memorial is the last one. Can I hear that again?
Yeah, it's showing the path through town on Second Street straight to Main Street. And the truck route path actually jogs from Second Street down to Front Street at St. Gertrude. And then, proceeds to Main Street from there. And I think that would be more consistent in showing with kind of what the existing mapping is, as opposed to, saying that straight down Second Street the whole way, there is really the major collector.
Okay, we'll look at that alignment and make sure we're depicting it correctly.
Okay, that's all I have.
Anybody else?
I just have a quick one on the bypass, the proposed bypass. And we talk about a bridge, and we've had discussions, but I know I've had discussions in the past that a bridge is not necessarily the best alternative to cross the Sacramento River. And I would like to just make a more generic term than bridge. If we keep saying bridge, everybody just thinks bridge. There are other methods of getting from one side of the river to the other that I think would be better for the community, better for the ecosystem.
I think we're talking a tunnel.
We're talking a tunnel.
Okay. So we can do a global, but I think, when we talk about, maybe it's a new crossing. A new crossing of.
Right.
Instead of a new bridge or a new tunnel. We don't
Right.
have to be specific.
Right.
Okay. Okay, well, what we'll do is a word search for that and make sure that we're using crossing versus one specific type of crossing.
Anybody else?
I have something.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Because I'm gathering, we're not going to, you want overview of everything. We're not going to go through sections like we have sort of.
That's correct.
Okay, so in section 3.1, then I'm wondering about why State Highway 84 is not mentioned, and the irregularity of the ferry service as an option off of State Highway 12, especially where it's included on some of our maps for talking about pedestrian right of way, et cetera, to have it be noted that it is a limitation for this town as an alternative route off of Highway 12, I think is important. And it's not.
So you want it
in there.
identified that it is a potential option despite the irregularity.
And that the irregularity creates a limitation that also hems us in and keeps us on Highway 12.
Okay, one moment while I catch that. Is there a specific location that's described?
I was just noting it in section 3.1, number 3 is where it seemed to me to fit, because you were listing what some of the constraining issues were on the circulation pattern.
Okay, got it.
I would also wonder if then in the very next paragraph under that Highway 12 designation, there's no mention again of State Route 84 or State Route 160, but you do pick up other sort of major thoroughfares. And it would seem to me that that at least State Route 160 is definitely one that is used by locals as well as commuters every day.
It's also a commercial route.
Fair.
Got it.
And then I wondered, we talk about Caltrans and you talk about Solano County, and there's no mention that I could find in this around Coast Guard and the Coast Guard's impact, I'm going to say probably upon, and I'm guessing here, upon the bridge and its up and down operation and the navigating those maritime waters and the impact it has on the result of Highway 12.
The Coast Guard boats require the lifting of the bridge. Is that-
Or just that they have input on its operation. I'm totally guessing, just seeing a notice this week that the Coast Guard was weighing in on 3 Mile Bridge and was giving notice that for the improvements or whatever the work is that is being done on 3 Mile, that it was a Coast Guard impact or notice. And I thought, oh, that's interesting that it wasn't in any of our work, that there wasn't a Coast Guard input.
It's a much lower bridge.
We believe the bridge is operated by Caltrans and,
Okay.
so, okay.
But I also thought then in an earlier meeting that we had that what the Port of West Sacramento was going to increase the number of seagoing vessels that were going to be using the deep water channel. And I believe that those are governed. I don't care if the Coast Guard is in there or not. There seemed to be a lack around the acknowledgement of the use of that waterway for commercial and large seagoing vessels that were impacting then the bridge on Highway 12. Or the, whatever we're calling
I
it.
will-
Vessels have the right of way, so if they come, the bridge goes up.
Yes, that's what my input was going to be, was the Coast Guard says that we have to allow the boat traffic to go through.
Whatever waterway, right?
Right.
Right.
They're like the railroad.
Point well taken, because the ships impact us. And so
Exactly.
however, we want to make sure we're acknowledging that and that any increased large container traffic is going to impact us more.
Exactly. I think then probably my last. Nope, sorry, I've got two more then. On page 10, where it talks about water transportation. Again, I would just underline that there is no mention of the Real McCoy Ferry and State Route 84 and the impact of irregular captaincy and irregular use of that vehicle.
Okay, done. From the top again, let me catch. So,
Sure. So on page 10,
Mhm.
that under water transportation, that there's no mention of State Route 84 or the Real McCoy Ferry, the ferry system, and its irregular availability and its irregular use as an
Got it.
impact.
anyone know who operates Will McCoy?
Caltrans.
Okay.
J-Max on the other side.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and then my last one is just a formatting comment. I found that section 3.5, the goals and policies and implementation programs, very difficult to read. I don't know if it would be better to put your goal and then your policy and then your programs that are all related so that you can see it play out. The way that it was formatted here, it wasn't even consistently formatted so that the programs followed the policies. It seemed to be irregular when that happened or when that would occur.
This section is different than any other, and we have struggled a little bit with that question. The goals and a set of policies and a set of programs don't consistently shake out exactly like that, because a policy will affect more than one goal,
Sure.
program will affect lots of policies. In this one, we did try to group them, which is different. In the other elements, we've done goals, all policies, all programs, and so we may revert to that, but we're going to do a consistent treatment throughout the general plan, just still trying to find the best way to do that.
That's all I have.
I have one.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Thank you. This is with regards to, and I unfortunately am looking at a black and white version of the road classifications, and under principal arterial, I'm assuming that Airport Road is a principal arterial. And so my next question is with regards to just, I know that Robin, you've been working on a pathway that goes from Church down into basically down to St. Francis into the business park. Is there any sort of overlay? Because I wouldn't want to get to the point where, for instance, if it's a principal arterial and it becomes a 4-lane versus a 2-lane, and we've already gone down the path of mapping out where a bike path should be, it would seem that there should be some sort of overlay so that you would be able to, when you're looking at the plan, you know that you would need to move that in actually quite a bit further than we would initially do. Like right today, if it stays as a 2-lane, then we would put a bike path, 15 feet in, but if it were to become a 4-lane, then it would need to come in significantly into the 67-acre property,
Or it could go on the other side
or it could go on the other side.
and.
Except that'd be a somewhat of a break from the back of Trilogy, the pathway system that's coming down from there.
Well, you just add the other 2 lanes over.
Oh, I see.
And,
Okay.
but currently there's no plans to make it a 4-lane road.
Okay. Okay, and where would that discussion happen? And I say this just because as our city grows and if Flannery were to do development near us, we would end up taking the brunt of that traffic. And that would need to be reflected somewhere, I would think.
Because that's during the development process, right? They decide that during vehicle.
When,
Travel.
if
I mean,
California
traffic's
Forever
gonna be,
goes forward, they're going to have a robust traffic analysis because that's going to be one of the biggies that we'll all have to know how it works. At that point, we'll look at how traffic will flow. And it'll be modeled and,
Right.
and if it looks like we're going to get overflow pushing out to Airport Road, which is completely reasonable to assume, then we'll have to look at what improvements would be needed and they may be required to widen Airport Road.
well, even with the development that we're proposing with the Brand Ranch development, they're gonna put 1,200 homes out there. Airport Road is gonna be a major thoroughfare for traffic. And at some point, I mean, you think about larger cities, they, you know, most of the time they're behind the 8 ball on their roadways. And I would think this is a 25-year plan that we would need to take that into account somewhere.
Our only saving grace at this point is there's little development on the north side of Airport, if you will. And we have the mini storage is
Mhm.
there. Otherwise, we have a
It cut
good
into their
right of way,
property.
but what we're not going to be doing, I don't think, is widening in the direction of Trilogy, widening in the direction of the city property. So we'll certainly be carrying that line down Church, the same line for curbs and lanes, and then the same line for the off-street bicycle lane that will be continued down. So I think really the question is, what will we do on the outboard side if we need to widen the road?
Okay.
So,
I own a business on Airport Road. I've been there since 1999. My name's Robert Lapp.
Sir, can you kindly use the microphone?
Where are all these people in this 4-lane gonna go? It's gonna stop. And it's all gonna have to go across that bridge eventually. So I mean, you're gonna build a 4-lane road. They're already racing up and down that road like idiots. It's crazy as hell trying to get out of there on a Friday. I've been there for 24 years. I gotta wait 10 minutes to get out of my driveway at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And now you guys are talking about putting a 4-lane road across there? And they're all gonna go where? Nowhere.
that's absolutely fair.
And then they end up in the interior of our city. They're all in the inner city there. You got tractor and trailers on St. Francis. You've got tractor and trailers on Rolling Green trying to get out of there. Making it a 4-lane is just gonna make it more accessible for the idiots to try to jam our town. And that's a problem.
Fair point.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a comment on.
Yeah.
On page 3, I think it is, it talks about, again, we're talking about Highway 12 and we're talking about California Forever and how that's going to help us get a bypass and because of the needs that they're going to create. We don't need California Forever to create any needs. We've already got the need right now today. And, you know, Highway 12 is a mess. And it's a mess because of that bridge. And we need to be talking about even if we didn't have California Forever, I think we need to be stronger in this document about the impact of the negative impacts of Highway 12 and what needs to happen.
So we have taken this on and we knew from the beginning that Highway 12 is not working for the community. It's resulting in the people sneaking around, trying to, get a little bit closer to the bridge before they get in the queue. We know all of that's happening. This group did identify that, yes, we need to have a different crossing. We stopped short of saying that crossing is in Montezuma Hills, or that crossing is at Airport Road, or that crossing is north of Airport Road. But you did say, yes, we need to find a new crossing. We're gonna have to follow up after the general plan because that in itself is just a tough nut to crack. It also involves something that's gonna be very unpopular with our residents, which is any new crossing will have a toll. So that's something we have to wrestle with too, is we don't like the traffic, but we also don't like tolls. So how are we gonna balance that? Regarding California Forever, they will increase the need, but more importantly, maybe they'll increase the means because they, as a project, have the ability to contribute more than any other stakeholder who's currently going to advocate for a new crossing. So they could help to make something happen that otherwise would be very difficult for Rio Vista and any other agencies that want to work with us to get a new crossing. So I don't think we're answering where the crossing goes in this effort.
No, I'm just frustrated because the Highway 12 is a very heavily traveled highway from Fairfield to Lodi. And it's constrained not only by the bridge here at Rio Vista, but it's the other two bridges also constrain it to be basically a 2-lane highway. Yet, if you look at the traffic, and I just did, if you look at traffic usage on highways around here, Highway 113 between Davis and Woodland is only 2/3 the amount of traffic, daily traffic on that highway, which is a 4-lane limited access highway, than Highway 12 has through Rio Vista. So it's much smaller traffic, yet they have this beautiful highway out there because Davis is there, I guess, because UC Davis. I don't know why they built that 4-lane highway, but that goes between Woodland and 80, but it's a nice road and there's no traffic on it. And yet we can't get anything done on Highway 12, and that's frustrating to me.
So we as an agency, I think we recognize there's a problem with Highway 12. We also, I would say it's fair to say we're not entirely satisfied with what Caltrans is doing on Highway 12 improvements right now. Yet they are in the process of doing a set of improvements and we do want to get those improvements. We don't want to lose those. So there is a little bit of a balancing act of how we're going to proceed with the transportation improvements. And these are big projects. So any other comments on the circulation element? All of the programs were new. You had only seen goals and policies previously, but the programs are new. If, we will extend the same offer that we're happy to accept comments after the meeting. If you are able to spend a little more time and find more revisions, more comments, please get them to Christine Ball and she'll forward them to us. So that, I think, concludes our circulation element discussion. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I know there'd been interest in the pedestrian crossing on Highway 12 and we've been struggling with it when we saw no future development on the, what I'll call the Del Rio Hill side of Highway 12. But now knowing that we have a potential developer in the form of California Forever owns that land, we are going to have that pedestrian crossing, grade separated pedestrian crossing back on the general plan diagram. So we were struggling with how we justify a pedestrian crossing that has nowhere to land. So now knowing that there's a good chance that we'll see some development on the Del Rio Hills property, we're back in the hunt for a grade separated crossing there.
Is there any discussion or has there been about an underpass for
It
safe
would
travel
be-
from north to
It would
south?
be ideal, probably, but I think we're too far along in the Caltrans improvement projects to get them to stop and redesign and figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I was actually thinking further up past Trilogy.
Oh,
I mean, if there's a new development over there, you could bring it down through there.
I think, yeah, well, we'll look at that in the future. I know that we we had heard some interest in, well, Caltrans is out there working. Right now is the very best time we can get the undercrossing. So I think it's something we'll have to take on at a later date. And where it is, whether it's Trilogy or further on the other side of Church, we'll work that out. Okay. I've got a little something to add, sorry.
We're talking about traffic congestion and problems in our city. With the Esperson Ranch opening up and the possible progression of urban growth on the other side of the highway from Esperson, that road right there, when it comes into town, it dips down really low. That would be a perfect spot to have an overpass, and Sierra can come all the way up, come into there, cross right there, come back underneath of there, and we could basically transport people from one side of town to the other without crossing that road.
Or without crossing it at the same grade.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'd have free crossing.
Yep. And that would minimize any traffic there from Church. That could all get looped into Church. That would make an overpass right there. That would make it a lot less, and school buses could get from one side of town to the other without crossing that road. And that road being Highway 12.
Okay.
Which is the biggest animal in this building is Highway 12 and that bridge. Because until the bridge is addressed, we can build as many 4-lane roads, we can put in all these easements, but it's still gonna stop. The growth is there. There's no toll on this road. They're going around the other major thoroughfares to come through here because it's easy. It doesn't cost anything.
Yep.
Tractor and trailers have increased in the last 25 years by over 120%. Look up.
Well, also we have essentially comments.
Can we use the microphone, please?
Yeah,
Thank you.
my name is Al Medvitz. I'm a rancher out in Rio Vista, intersection. Our home is on the intersection of Amy Road and Montezuma Hills Road. As I listen to this discussion, there are several things. First of all, I don't know if any of you listen to KQED, but there was a very interesting forum this morning on mega urban settings, including San Francisco and the Bay Area. It has a lot to do with this discussion. I would urge everybody to stream it. It will be rebroadcast this afternoon, but there's a lot relevant about population, congestion, housing prices, and that sort of thing that would be useful in these discussions. The second thing is that years ago, I know many of you may not have been here, we had extensive discussions about the potential routes of Highway 12 and the necessity for a bridge. Before the city council, we had lots of discussions. And the ultimate decision of that was a preferred route was through town. I mean, taking into account that the traffic not only comes from Rio Vista, but what's happening in Fairfield, Vacaville, Vallejo, and traffic coming from 113 down and merging onto 12. It's not just Rio Vista, and I don't know whether in your traffic element you've taken into account that growth as well. That ultimately is going to force, probably sooner rather than later, a decision about the bridges, whether or not there's Flannery. The ultimate decision of the city council at the time was that any development of Highway 12 and the bridge had to be of economic benefit to the core of the city. That routes around the city would have the effect of taking traffic out of the core area and would have a serious negative impact on the economics of the city. That needs, I think, I don't know whether you guys have looked at those earlier reports, and looked at the studies involved, but I would really suggest you go into the archives. If you don't have them, some of us might have them in our files, and we'd be happy to provide them. I don't think it's reasonable to think about reinventing the bridge, right? We've gone through this many years. The third thing is in talking about routes around Highway 12. There's a lot of literature, formal literature about what are called queued networks. And it applies to traffic as well as to highways. And that if you have a congested network, and there's a point of congestion, and you build alternative routes to the point of congestion, you actually increase congestion. So the traffic coming off Highway 12, going down Montezuma Hills, backing up on Front Street, or going the other way and backing up on River Road, actually increases congestion, even though the people driving the cars thinking they're escaping it. All right, I think it's important for the consultants to go at and review that literature. I reviewed it a long time ago, and I'm sure it's been updated, but the notion is, how do you address queued, Q-U-E-D, queued networks? So, and then, I mean, there is going to be further discussion about Flannery, right?
Yes.
Okay, we can talk, I'll hold my further discussions, but specifically to this and to, I mean, there's other things to say about land use, but that will come up later again in future meetings. We got here late, so I don't want to take your time, but I think, just to reiterate, go back and look what the city has already did. They spent a lot of time on it. And there's some, that data should be available. And I mean, just one last point. When the city was considering brand development and, trilogy and all that before it happened, they did a traffic study. And at the time, they were predicting full build out at 20 years, which would have been about 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And they were looking at traffic at full build out, where, all the brand was done, Esperson's, all that. Their projections at the time were that the traffic, and I then went and looked at their projections and compared it to freeway traffic. That traffic was going to be the equivalent of traffic on the Embarcadero Freeway in San Francisco just before it collapsed. We're getting that kind of, as even without Flannery, just and everything else. I think when we look at the volumes of traffic, it's worthwhile and go and compare that to say what traffic is across the Carquinez Strait Bridge or elsewhere. We're going to have traffic levels here that rival the most congested highways in the state. And to think about how to address that, it's going to take a lot more than Flannery. And Flannery's potential contributions, they may be able to contribute, but it's certainly not going to be the majority of the contribution. And I doubt very much it's going to have an impact on whether the bridge actually gets built or not. So anyhow, I'll try.
Thank you. Anybody else before we go on? Okay. Oh, we can move forward.
The discussion you all came for, California Forever. Just 4 months ago, all we knew was a property owner named Flannery that had an unmanned office in New York was buying a whole bunch of land. Now we know California Forever intends to develop a new city in eastern Solano County, and by all likelihood, I've looked at ownership of their maps or ownership of their lands. It looks like California Forever will be located relatively close to Rio Vista. So since that time, we've been trying to figure out, well, what does that mean in our general plan process, which we were 2 years into, and now we find out that the, as I've referred to him, the 800-pound gorilla has come and sat down next to us. So next slide. How is California Forever going to progress? They are going to put a ballot measure. They're going to attempt to put a ballot measure on the November 24 ballot that would accomplish three things. It would identify the changes to the Solano County General Plan required to accommodate their project. It would have something they call a specific plan. My understanding is it's at least a land plan that will say development goes here and generally this is what it is. And then there's going to be some kind of commitments to the public of what they'll do for public benefit. And that as a package will go before the voters. If it gets approved, Solano County is compelled to process the project consistent with what's been proposed. So at that, this is my understanding is this will take out of Solano County's control the decision of yes or no. The project still will have to go through a review and entitlement process, but simply denying it won't be an option for the county. Because of the lead time to get on the ballot measure, for them to begin collecting signatures and to make November 24, which in terms of what they're accomplishing is right around the corner. They're going to need to release publicly a land plan. So pretty soon we're going to know where California Forever intends to develop. At this point, we're really not clear on exactly what their plans are. We've had some comments about where they won't be, but we really can't identify where they are going yet. What we do know is they will go on the ballot measure, and but the measure, our understanding at this point is there's no development that will be on that proposed plan that's within what we've designated as the city's planning area. And so a lot of this discussion right now is leading up to what do you as the general plan working group want to do within our planning area? And what do you want to designate it? And how do you want to respond in the general plan to the fact that California Forever is unfolding at the same time that we're trying to complete a general plan? Next slide. So back in October, you did approve this expanded planning area boundary. I can pull that up, but I think we all recall that it wraps north and west of Brand Ranch and then goes on the other side of Highway 12. At the time, we did designate it as study area. Staff has proposed now that you designate it as urban reserve, that you use the urban reserve designation that we talked about with some minor modifications in the general plan. In doing that, you are going into kind of a holding pattern. You're not saying it's going to be open space or houses or stores. You're just saying that you do want to have a stake in this. That would be adequate for us to move forward with an effort the city council has directed, which is updating the municipal services review and the sphere of influence for the city. So if we stay with the urban reserve designation, we can still go forward with the MSR. We can still go forward with the sphere expansion. Next slide. So that is kind of option one. If we do that, we can keep moving forward with the general plan. We don't have to revisit any of our technical analysis. We don't have to go back to any of the circulation or the other technical studies that have been done for the general plan. So this is kind of the move forward without a lot of change. Next slide. The other option is you may want to, at this point, get out there and say, no, we know what we want. We want something. We want an open space buffer, or we want to be able to have houses or something. If you want to go down that path, we can in this general plan identify specific designations. The challenges with that are that development would require analysis, and it hasn't been considered in anything we've done so far. So we would be backtracking on our circulation analysis. And then from the circulation analysis, because, well, if there's more homes and more jobs, there's more traffic. So we have to reduce circulation, and then that feeds into some other technical studies. The advantage of identifying those uses now and analyzing them is you could be on a path to more aggressively annex land. The downside is if you don't get it right, we'll just be redoing the general plan and all of the analysis in the future anyway, and we won't really have bought ourselves anything. So there's a little bit of a risk of trying to quickly identify specific land uses. That's why, you know, on the whole, staff is really recommending staying with the urban reserve, but we want, you know, this is your call. You need to offer us the direction. Next slide. So as mentioned, if we do identify the specific designations, we have to do some additional analysis, but which we can do. There'll be a delay on the general plan, but that's all can be accomplished. It also would leave us in a better place to move forward with annexations, but at the same time, we'd also need to look at how those homes, those stores, whatever they are, would be served. So we'd be looking at updating the MSR. A lot of moving parts here, but what it really comes down to is, are you comfortable with an urban reserve designation that's a holding pattern, or do you want to step forward and bring in some type of specific land uses that we can include now in the general plan? Is that making sense?
It does. My question would be how do we not at least have a holding, I mean, how do we make any decision other than a holding one until we even know what the plan is, what California Forever's plan is, other than if we were just going to point blank say, no, we don't want that.
Well, one thing implicit here is you wouldn't do anything until you see the California Forever plan, because you.
So waiting for that. So not a
You would
decision.
absolutely wait and say, oh, that's what they're planning. So now I think we want to do this. Yes.
But that's contingent on the vote passing. And then if the
Well,
vote doesn't
yeah.
pass, then the plan completely changes all over.
Yes, we won't really know until November what's happening. Yeah, so there's a lot of speculation if you go in the direction of trying to anticipate uses now. And there will be some backtracking. So well, we were heading towards finalizing it. Yeah. So
Can I make a suggestion about that? There's certain elements to this general plan that we have to update every so often, like the housing element and things. Maybe this Flannery California Forever thing is one of those elements that we have to look at more often than 20 years out. Because it's going to be a moving target, and it's going either in one direction or another. And until, like Lisa says, until they give us the plan, we don't know we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we're really up against. We know what they've said. We know the speculation. We know the conspiracy theories out there, but we don't yet know what we don't know. And once they give us the plans, I think we as a group and as a city will have a better idea in how to address this, because it is going to have to be addressed. There's going to be things about it we like. There's going to be things about it we don't like. But once we figure out what it is that they're going to present to us, then I think we have, I mean, we could sit here till, 3 weeks from now, still talking about California Forever and Flannery, but until we get their plans, it almost, I mean, I know all of you came to talk about it, and we will obviously give you the opportunity, but until we know what's going on, we're just kind of spinning our wheels, really. And it's my opinion. I don't know how the rest of you guys feel, but
I think to take that one step further, assume they do get approved in November.
okay,
Nothing is going to change very quickly.
right?
They don't have a water system. They don't have a wastewater system. They have a ton of stuff to figure out. I would speculate that even if California Forever is approved, and if they're really good at getting moving, we're not going to feel anything changing for 5 years. I don't think. I mean, I've watched big new greenfield areas open up. They don't open up overnight. So and then we don't know how they'll be received by the market. You know, they're not immune from ups and downs of the economy or, you know, business and employment trends or anything else. So it's not a matter of they get approved in November and it's a done deal that 3 years later something happens. So I think that if California Forever unfolds, it's going to unfold over time. I would say that in Rio Vista, since the last general plan was updated, two things have happened. We built Trilogy and Liberty, and we have more traffic on Highway 12. Other than that, this is almost the same town as it was 20 years ago. So just as the person who hasn't been here for very long, I'm probably completely off base, but comparatively, California Forever is almost a seismic change in what's happening in eastern Solano County. So if we wait, maybe in 5 or 10 years, we're going to be in a position of needing to update the general plan again because things will have changed so much. But I'm kind of, I appreciate the comments of the chair that we really are, we could spin our wheels.
Anybody else up here have any comments
Yeah,
before we go ahead, Art?
If we stay with the urban reserve designation, that is, we're not tying the city's hands to go on to look at a sphere of influence, because I have also attended Flannery's or California Forever Town Hall, and I heard directly that they have an eye on Rio Vista for development. Whether that's Plan B or something, the comment that I heard made was that Rio Vista is considering their general plan now on our property, and we are looking to possibly develop that. So whether that's going to be Plan B or whether that's going to be in conjunction with their major development, they are looking at property that they own within or around the city right now today. And so I think we need to also be proactive in staying on top of it and looking. And as long as we can keep our options open by staying with an urban reserve designation, that's fine. But I say that's the minimum we should be doing. And we, you know, because we need to be on top of this for the next period of time. I don't want the city to be blindsided because we didn't do something.
Anybody else up here?
My name is Jean McCormick, and my husband Al Medvitz and I are farmers here. There are a few other farmers in the room. I feel sort of aghast at this urban reserve. The last time I heard this area referred to, it was called the agricultural preserve. And I wondered when that decision was made to get rid of agriculture. And I also think that this is more than just a meeting. I think this is a long, as you said, it is going to take a long time. But anyway, I think you're jumping the gun a lot.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I
Go ahead,
think,
Rick.
you know, back to Art's point and what I was asking questions about, what I was asking questions about earlier about the Del Rio development, Esperson property, is we can't control outside of city limits what's going to be happening. We can't control inside of city limits. And so I don't know if it'd be worthwhile for us to take a look, just have a small presentation at our next meeting, what, if anything, we can do, or if we need to do anything with that 500 acres, just because it is something that if we wanted to do something with it, we can. If we don't want to do something with it, we can too. But That is something that we can affect now, and we probably could decide now how we see that property in the future.
One thing we'll have to look at before we go too far with any changes out there is because of new state laws, we can't just make housing go away. So,
Sure.
what we could reconfigure if we keep the same housing density, move all the density over to Highway 12. We can do something like that, but that block of land, we can figure out it has some amount of holding capacity for homes, and I don't think we can reduce it to less than that.
Well, and that's my point is just to, for us maybe to see what all that looks like. And I don't know if I'm asking for a lot there, but
Actually,
What your job is.
I think it's an interesting topic. I do.
okay.
Chair Stanish, we have a hand raised.
Okay, go ahead.
Roxanne, would you kindly unmute?
Oh, hi, this is Roxanne Stiles Donnelly again. Couple things came to my mind as we were talking about this urban reserve. I think it's important that we move forward on that no matter what we call it, whether it's ag reserve, urban reserve, or, you know, city reserve, I don't know. But one of the things that we do know, Flannery has, or California Forever has said it. We heard it at the town hall meetings, is that they are planning to annex extra land into our city. We do know that. They said it. So that's something that we need to take into consideration as, you know, do we want any annex land into our city at this point? And so I think we need to move forward with this reserve idea, because as they announced that they made it sound like it was a done deal, that they already, you know, came to us to annex this property. I think we need to protect ourselves and say, no, we don't want any land annexed into our city. These are our boundaries. This is what's in city limits. You know, this is in the general plan. Because when you put this out there as a plan, and let's say California Forever, you know, didn't get the initiative overturned for you know, what's it called? The Solano Land Initiative. Anyway, sorry. They can move forward with this annexation process. And if we don't have anything in our plan about that, you know, that means that we haven't been thinking forward. So I really like the idea of having some type of reserve in the plan. Sorry, I wasn't.
Paul? Can you explain annexation for everyone so we're all clear on it?
So annexations can be initiated by a property owner or by the city. So we can actively go out and decide that the city wishes to expand and take new land in, or a property owner can come to us and say, I would like to be annexed. When it's property owner initiative, then it's the choice of the city. So we will never be compelled to annex land that we don't wish to annex.
And to that point, California Forever hasn't come to us officially and asked for any land to be annexed. So
They not only haven't asked for land to be annexed, they haven't expressed any interest in connecting into our existing infrastructure. There's been no discussions whatsoever of the city facilitating California Forever development.
Okay,
So
thank you.
And I had a question. It sounded like Roxanne was suggesting that they wanted to annex part of Rio Vista. Was that what I heard, Roxanne? And I don't actually think that's possible because that would have to go through LAFCO, would it not? And
What they were saying at the Fairfield meeting was that they would immediately look at annexing the rest, I believe it's probably the rest of the Esperson property,
right.
into the city of Rio Vista.
but that would be.
But it
if
isn't.
the
It would be
ballot
something
measure
that they would
failed.
have to come and ask.
Right,
they
and we have
asked,
complete
we say
control
yes
over
or no.
that.
Correct.
Right. Thank you.
Anybody else with any comments? Al?
Excuse me. Thank you so much, sorry, but as I listen to this, I think of the water board. SQUA, Water Agency. When it came up, that Flannery was proposing to have discussions with the water agency about moving the aqueduct, the North Bay Aqueduct, and possibly getting water for that. And they just wanted to continue discussions. The response of the agency was, you don't have a plan. We don't even want to talk to you. We don't know what you're talking about. You know, what, it seems to me at this point, and this is, I think, given what I know about Flannery and their strategies and their thinking, that they are sowing kind of dissent. They're sowing disorder. To me, it seems that the water boards, the water agency's approach was exactly right. When you have something definite to talk about, then you can come and talk to us. In the meantime, we are defining what our needs are, what our desires are, laying that out. When you have a plan, you can come and take into account what we want. We're not necessarily, we don't need to cater to what you want. You need to come. We are in charge. We are the ones who formulates the annex process, or we go through the annex process. We're the lead agency in that. We're the lead agency in going to LAFCO. So it seems to me that rather than being set back and saying, oh, this giant force is coming at us, and we have to take that into account, we say, this giant force is at that. We're going to define what we want, set our boundaries. And then if they come and they want to negotiate, you're in a negotiating position. Otherwise, you're in complete uncertainty, and it gives them a serious advantage, which can be misused. So that's my thought. This is going to go on for a while. They're going to make their efforts. They've owned the land. We have to recognize that. But they're not really part of the city yet. And they're not even, you know, they haven't come up with a definite definition of what they want. But we can do that in the city, say, this is how we want. We don't want our traffic to get even more overwhelming than we can handle. We don't want more housing without jobs. You know, housing doesn't bring jobs. Jobs bring housing. And when you reverse that process, you end up with the dysfunction of the Bay Area and San Francisco and elsewhere. So anyhow, those are my thoughts. I could go on for another 50 minutes, but I won't. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Anybody else?
I'm shy.
Third time. He covered a lot of what I had to say. One of the things that we've experienced in this town is that the Flannery group could not be trusted. There was deceit all the way through. And here we are, we're standing back waiting for them to give everybody a plan. Their plan can't be established because they haven't pilfered all the land that they wanted to pilfer.
Go ahead, Bill.
I follow that, huh? I just think it's interesting, if I'm not mistaken, Bill Mortimer for the record. If I'm not mistaken, the regional director for California Forever, or Flannery, is sitting in the back of the room tonight. And we're doing all this talking, and we have all these questions and all these things going on, and not one word from California Forever. It needs to be noted on the record that they're here in attendance. and saying absolutely zero so far. Okay, I want to make sure that's on the record. Because I know what's going to happen a year from now. They're going to say, well, we went to all these meetings and blah, 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 you know? So I think it's just kind of interesting. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Rich Lynn, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you want to come up and answer any of these comments, or so you have no comment? Okay, that's fair enough. No comment from Rich Lynn. Anybody else? Oh, guess we do.
Hi, I'm Rich Lynn. I'm a citizen of Rio Vista. And in terms of what we're discussing, as a citizen of Rio Vista, I'm interested in what we're doing and what we're talking about. But no, I would not want to comment because I don't know enough about what I'm here to get information and learn as some of us are. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody online?
There are none online, Chair.
Okay. Oh, we'll move on.
So Chair, circling back, the request is, do you support the designation of the urban reserve within the planning area for purposes of this general plan? And I did understand Committee Member Dolk has asked to revisit the uses on the Esperson Del Rio Hills property. Is that something that as a group you would like to take on?
Yes.
Okay, then we actually had not anticipated having a meeting in February, but this is a subject that we can be ready for in February. We didn't have more materials for you, so if that's something you'd like, we'll pick this back up and look at specifically the Del Rio Hills property at the February meeting.
And I hate to ask this, but if California Forever introduces their program, could we discuss that?
Yeah, certainly.
at the
Once
February-
they make it public,
Once they make it
Yeah.
public, can that be on the agenda for February?
assuming, I assume it will be out, so I think we're good for that, yeah. Yeah. It's February 1st. You would get no objection from staff because that's 3 weeks out and we could use an extra week. So, for now, we're scheduled for February 1st. If we can make arrangements for the room, would the group like to push the meeting for 1 week to allow a little more time? And as soon as we have a plan from California Forever, as soon as the city has it, we'll share it out. Okay, so it looks like we could go February 8th. Do we want to go ahead and do that?
What's the group feel? Is the 8th all right? Emmett?
Okay, so
Okay.
we're
I'm
we're
okay with
just
it.
about wrapped up. That takes care of the planning area California Forever discussion. We have just one more thing to discuss with you. We're actually getting pretty close to the end of this process, the general plan update. What we want to talk about is how we're going to get from here to a public review draft element or public review draft general plan. You only have one more element to review and we're still working through it a little bit inside City Hall. It's the economic development element. So that's going to be coming forward to you in March. We're not going to be able to have that ready for, we weren't going to be able to have it ready for the 1st. I'm not sure we might be able to have it ready for the 8th. So we'll think about that. But once you have that element, you will have received all of the elements of the general plan. We've been doing various exercises that have required looking at from element to element, set of policies. And we at the staff level really want to go through and shake out some of the kinks. Committee member Hatchman mentioned the fact that the goals and policies and programs in circulation were different and not really very friendly. There's also changes that are just formatting. And I'm talking formatting like columns and kinds of things that aren't consistent. There undoubtedly is grammatical errors in there still. There's probably typos. As many times as we review it, we always miss some. Those are changes we would like to ask your permission to correct without doing in red line track changes. Just let us fix that stuff, but don't ask us to bring it back to you because it'll just be a little bit confusing. The second set of changes that we will identify is our CEQA consultant is going to look at all of our policies and he's going to say, if you had these additional policies, you would eliminate environmental impacts, and that's a really good thing. So we would like you to consider adding some policies. Or maybe we're going to see some that we think could be consolidated or strengthened. Those are substantive changes that we would present to you and track changes. So when we make changes like that, it would be presented to you in a form that you can see, oh, this language changed and I can see how it changed. So those are two different types of changes that we're going to do at the staff level as we go from the introduction to the final element and look for consistency and start to prepare for this document that's going to go out as the public draft. Is that making sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
So really what we're looking at is what's the path and what's your role as the working group in reviewing these final changes that are going to happen from the beginning to the end of the general plan. So non-substantive changes we'll just incorporate. Substantive changes we'll do and track changes. So you'll get an element, you'll get a general plan with all of the elements, and where meaningful changes have occurred, you'll see them and be able to look at those, but you'll also be able to read cover to cover and say, is this general plan really capturing everything that I cared about, that I wanted to have in the document? Is this our new general plan yet, or do we still have additions that are needed? So that review, once you get that document, next slide, we're anticipating somewhere around giving you 2 weeks to review it and provide comments. I'm not sure that we'll get back together and go over those as a group, or just ask you to submit them to us and we'll input them into a document. But from there, we're going to go to a fully formatted draft general plan that will be released to the public. And at that point, your job as the working group is going to be completed, because we'll go out to the public and then we'll have hearings at the Planning Commission and City Council. So I also want to get your thoughts there. Do you want to hold additional meetings, or what's your thought of wrapping this up? Because you now will have reviewed all of the elements and you will have seen the entire document cover to cover review. And I don't want to take your jobs away from you too quickly, but you're getting close to having completed your job on this.
I think that we've done this as a group, and I think we should still get together as a group and give it our final stamp of approval, if that's what you want to call it. I don't know how the rest of you
Okay.
guys feel,
Great.
but I think as a group, we've done a lot of work here, and I think it wouldn't be beneficial to us not to put our stamp of approval.
Great. Then we'll do that with what I'll call the admin draft. So the evolution of this is an admin draft is, pretty much as good as we can make it, and you're getting the look at it before it goes public. So it's like a 90% draft. The public review draft is a 95% draft. It's now gotten through you. It's not done until the council adopts, but at that point you will have reviewed a complete, this is what it looks like, this is the whole thing. You'll say, yes, I like your changes. You'll say, we have a few more, whatever. And then we'll take all of that, produce the public review draft that then will get published. So that would be your last meeting or meetings, because we may not get through that in one meeting.
And can we have a physical copy, not
Yes.
just electronic?
Yeah, we already have binders and section dividers and things that are all going to be set up, because you're going to need to turn pages. You're going to
Yeah.
go to this element and that element and back and forth. And that's the only way you can look at it. Yeah, we'll give you each a pad of sticky notes.
Al, come on up.
Really quick procedural issue in this, thinking back again to the water agency, Flannery was asking if they could continue informal discussions with the executive director. And the agency said no. And so my question is, I was thinking is, has Flannery been in touch with you guys?
We have had presentations from them. They've come in and talked about where they're going. They did one before the town hall sessions. They've gone to all of the public agencies. Yeah, they've met with like the city manager and mayor of all of the agencies.
Okay, I think that in the interest of transparency, that be made very public. any interactions you have with these guys is made public and the nature of the discussions, disclosed.
Okay,
All right, and you know, whether, I think if you're drafting the plan and there's this ongoing communication elsewise, I mean, you know, that raises questions, but I
okay.
think you should consider that. Thank you.
Ian, come on up.
Ian Anderson, one more farmer. I do not live in the city limits of Rio Vista. I just had a question for specialty staff. How should I identify you? You were a consultant?
Contract planner? Yeah.
Okay. I just want to get a clear understanding of urban reserve because it's very important. The land is zoned A160 out in our areas. And was there any jurisdiction that actually verifies that the city of Rio Vista says, well, we want to get urban reserve for the next 8 miles? Did I hear you say that we could do that or revisit that? There is no designate, there's no others. LAFCO doesn't ever say, oh, that's a good idea. That's a poor idea.
Planning area is completely at the discretion of the city, and nobody really particularly cares what we designate because it has no legal authority and it's not binding whatsoever. It is telegraphing that the city feels there's a relationship of the land to the community.
And has
So-
the city of Vacaville created a urban reserve area?
My understanding is they did identify an urban reserve and it was added to their sphere of influence. But before it goes further, which annexation is really the big change, that's where it goes from being county land to city land. The urban reserve, my understanding is it has to be replaced with something. It has to be houses, parks, jobs, open space, whatever. But it can't, urban reserve is not a clearly designated use that I think would support annexation.
Okay, thank you. I just think as your group looks at this, maybe Rick could add that to your agenda to fully understand the urban reserve and it's what it truly means. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Margaret.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Anderson. I don't live in the town limits, but I feel that I am a Rio Vistan. I grew up here. Ian and I farm out in the Montezuma Hills, just like Jeannie and Al. I hope that you all recognize the significance of the number of farmers who have shown up to your meeting tonight. Because while this is a working group for the general plan of Rio Vista, the agricultural community beyond the city limits has helped define Rio Vista for 200 years. And so my question is, within the document that you are creating, do you acknowledge the impact agriculture has on Doak Tractor or the car dealerships, the school system? Lisa's also a product of the outlying agricultural area. And while we aren't allowed to vote in the city limits, we create a significant part of the community by volunteering, by participating in community activities, supporting the philanthropy of the community. Is there any documentation within the general plan update, which might only be symbolic, but is there recognition that this is an agricultural community and that with the purchase of the ground by Flannery and the plans by California Forever, they, even without breaking ground on anything, they have already significantly impacted the ability of your local farmers to produce, which is going to have an impact on the community. So I would appreciate an answer whether there is anything in the document, in the general plan, and beyond that, whether you would feel that it's important enough to recognize how agriculture is at the heart of this community. I see, I very clearly see wind generators in the logo, but I also see kind of like more mountains than hills. I don't see anything showing agriculture. And so I would
1 minute,
just
Ms. Anderson.
appreciate answers to those two questions.
The short answer is yes. Agriculture was often cited as one of the values of the community. There's a lot of folks that we really like the setting. We like kind of being a rural community. That came up often. So that's part of kind of the setting discussion. There in the natural resources section, there's goals and policies about preserving agriculture. And I'm not sure specifically if economic development is looking at agriculture and its impacts. I don't think we got so far as to say, and the agricultural industry generates X number of dollars within the city, because we just didn't take the analysis to that level. But yeah, there's very much a recognition of Rio Vista's setting as an agricultural community.
Is that in the economic development draft possibly?
I would have to look and see how agriculture was identified, but there is a listing of industries that are significant in Rio Vista, and I think that agriculture is one of those that's listed. I would have to go back and look at specifically.
And we'll know more at the next meeting.
Yeah, and well, the meeting after, but yes. Agriculture as a theme and the preservation of agriculture is in the general plan, yeah.
Anybody else? Anybody online?
There are none online, Chair.
Okay.
I think we have a path towards the, first the admin draft and then the public review draft. So thank you for that guidance. And with that, I think we can go to the next slide and just talk about meetings. Ignore the first one where we talked about canceling, because that's now going to be February 8th, and we'll at least revisit the land uses on the Del Rio Hills property. And if there's anything else we're able to put together, as far as really the one thing would be, we might be able to do economic development, but I'm not sure. So we will hold a meeting. That'll be on February 8th. And if we do pull economic development forward, then we would be skipping the March meeting. If we are not able to get it in February, then we'll look at economic development in March. That's where we're at.
Okay. Thank you all for coming and your input. We really appreciate it. And that's all that we have. Happy New Year. Hopefully it's a healthy one for everybody, and meeting's adjourned.